So Act 4, Scene 1 is where we see the wedding of Hero and Claudio. And almost all of the characters that we've seen so far are in this scene, other than the watch themselves. And it's set inside of a church. And so enter Don Pedro, Don John, Leonato, Friar Francis, Claudio, Benedick, Hero, Beatrice, and some others. And Leonato says, "Come, Friar Francis, be brief, only to the plain form of marriage, and you shall recount their particular duties afterwards." Leonato is in a rush. He wants this marriage completed, but also I think it's Shakespeare's way of bypassing the necessity of that whole thing and keeping it a short scene. And the friar says, "You come hither, my lord, to marry this lady." Claudio says no. This is the first indication that Claudio is going to go through with his plan of shaming Hero. But Leonato steps in and he says, "To be married to her, friar. You come to marry her." And the friar says, "Lady, you come hither to be married to this count." And Hero says, "I do. She is currently unaware that anything is amiss." And friar says, "If either of you know any inward impediment why you should not be conjoined, I charge you on your souls to utter it." And Claudio again speaks up, which what we've seen of Claudio so far, he generally just goes along with things. He's not one to instigate any sort of event or communication or in any way going off script from this traditional romance that they've set out for him. And yet Claudio says, "Know you any Hero?" Hero says, "None, my lord." And Friar says, "Know you any count?" And Leonato interrupts and says, "I dare make his answer, none." So Claudio, usually passive, following his leaders. And Leonato clearly considers himself to be a powerful man, sort of on a par with Don Pedro. And so Leonato is frequently stepping in where it would be Claudio's part to speak. So Leonato says, "I dare make his answer, none." And Claudio says, "Oh, what men dare do, what men may do, what men daily do, not knowing what they do." And Benedick says, "How now, interjections? Why then, some be of laughing, as a ha 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 ha." Benedick trying to make a joke, trying to lighten the mood, because he consents it's going the wrong way. So usually Benedick is part of that grouping. He is with Claudio and Don Pedro frequently, and yet he has no knowledge of what's going on, which separates him even further from the men that he has been friends with for the last length of time. At the very start of the play, Claudio, Don Pedro, Benedick, they were a trio of men. They'd been to war together, they were on the same side, they would laugh together. And now there is a plot with Leonato, Claudio, and Don Pedro in which to trick Benedick. There's now a plot with Don John, Don Pedro, and Claudio to shame Hero. And so Benedick is being excluded from and separated from, in our heads, from these men that were previously his allies. And so Claudio then says, "Stand thee by, friar. Father, by your leave, will you, with free and unconstrained soul, give me this maid, your daughter?" He's trying to clarify the situation for his public here that he is performing for. Leonato says, "As freely, son, as God did give her me." And Claudio says, "And what have I to give you back, whose worth may counterpoise this rich and precious gift?" And you can imagine that Claudio is saying all of this in a sort of sarcastic manner. And Don Pedro says, "Nothing unless you render her again." So Claudio now has Don Pedro as his sidekick. It's usually the opposite way round. And Claudio says, "Sweet prince, you learn me noble thankfulness. There, Leonato, take her back again. Give not this rotten orange to your friend. She's but the sign and semblance of her honour. Behold, how like a maid she blushes here. Oh, what authority and show of truth can cunning sin cover itself withal? Comes not that blood as modest evidence to witness simple virtue? Would you not swear, all you that see her, that she were a maid, by these exterior shows? But she is none. She knows the heat of a luxurious bed. Her blush is guiltiness, not modesty." And that's it. Claudio has now done it. He has announced to the whole world that Hero has cheated on him, has known a man before marriage, which was a big no-no for where they were at that time. And Leonato says, "What do you mean, my lord?" And Claudio says, "Not to be married, not to knit my soul to an approved wanton." And Leonato, "Dear my lord, if you, in your own proof, have vanquished the resistance of her youth and made defeat of her virginity." And Claudio says, "I know what you would say. If I have known her, you'll say she did embrace me as a husband, and so extenuate the forehand sin. No, Leonato, I never tempted her with word too large, but as a brother to his sister showed bashful sincerity and comely love." I'm not entirely comfortable with the idea that this sort of fairy tale romance between Claudio and Hero was a brother and sister kind of a love. I don't think that's expressed particularly well. Perhaps the meaning and the implications have changed over the years, but still it sounds a little bit creepy to me. And then Hero says, "And seemed I ever otherwise to you?" Claudio says, "Out on thee, seeming! I will write against it. You seem to me as Dian in her orb, as chaste as is the bud ere it be blown. But you are more intemperate in your blood than Venus, or those pampered animals that rage in savage sensuality." And Hero says, "Is my lord well, that he doth speak so wide?" And Leonato says, "Sweet prince, why speak not you?" Don Pedro says, "What should I speak? I stand dishonoured, that have gone about to link my dear friend to a common stale." And Leonato says, "Are these things spoken, or do I but dream?" Don John says, "Sir, they are spoken, and these things are true." Now Don John is getting in on the action, which should instantly cast doubt over everything, because nobody trusts Don John at this point. And yet he speaks. And Benedick, still no idea why this is happening, tries to lighten the mood again and saying, "This looks not like a nuptial." And Hero says, "True, oh God." And Claudio says, "Leonato, stand I here? Is this the prince? Is this the prince's brother? Is this the face of Heroes? Are our eyes our own?" So again, he's laying everything out so that there's no wriggle room for misinterpretation. And Leonato says, "All this is so, but what of this, my lord?" Claudio says, "Let me but move one question to your daughter, and by that fatherly and kindly power that you have in her, bid her answer truly." And Leonato says, "I charge thee do so, as thou art my child." So again, Hero has no power of her own. She is under the dominion and the power of her father. It would then be Claudio, and so she has no way of standing up for herself. And Hero says, "Oh God, defend me, how am I beset? What kind of catechizing call you this?" Claudio says, "To make you answer truly to your name." And Hero says, "Is it not Hero? Who can blot that name with any just reproach?" And Claudio says, "Marry, that can Hero. Hero itself can blot out Hero's virtue. What man was he that talked with you yesternight, out at your window betwixt 12 and 1? Now, if you are a maid, answer to this." And Hero says, "I talked with no man at that hour, my lord." Now, it's never said one way or the other whether Margaret is actually present at this wedding. But if she were, and she overheard all this, then surely she would know it was her that was at the window at that time, and could potentially speak up. But that never happens. And so Hero says, "I talked with no man at that hour, my lord." And Don Pedro says, "Why, then are you no maiden? Leonato, I am sorry you must hear this. Upon my honour, myself, my brother, and this grieved count did see her, hear her, at that hour last night, talk with a ruffian at her chamber window, who hath indeed, most like a liberal villain, confessed the vile encounters they have had 1,000 times in secret." And Don John said, "Fie, fie, they are not to be named, my lord, not to be spoken of. There is not chastity enough in language without offence to utter them. Thus, pretty lady, I am sorry for thy much misgovernment." Don John having a dig at Leonato as well there. And Claudio says, "O hero, what a hero hadst thou been if half thy outward graces had been placed about thy thoughts and counsels of thy heart. But fare thee well, most foul, most fair, farewell, thou pure in piety and in pious purity. For thee I'll lock up all the gates of love, and on my eyelids shall conjecture hang, to turn all beauty into thought of harm, and never shall it be more gracious." So Claudio is sounding like he regrets the loss of this love, that he will love no other. And we'll see later that his behaviour doesn't match these words at all. And Leonato says, "Hath no man's dagger here a point for me?" So he is also heartbroken, and Hero then swoons. And Beatrice says, the first time we've heard from her at this point, "Why, how now, cousin, wherefore sink you down?" Don John says, "Come, let us go. These things come thus to light, smother her spirits up." And so Don Pedro, Don John, and Claudio all leave at that point. They've done their damage, they've shamed her in front of everyone, and now they're going to leave. And Benedick stays behind and says, "How doth the lady?" Beatrice says, "Dead, I think. Help, uncle. Hero. Why, hero, uncle, Signor Benedick, friar." So she is desperately trying to get anybody's attention. And Leonato says, "O fate, take not away thy heavy hand. Death is the fairest cover for her shame that may be wished for." And now Leonato is also someone I no longer like. That whatever they are saying about her, whether it's true or not, that he would now wish his daughter dead. This is his only child. Sure, he's had a shock, but to wish your own child dead seems a little extreme, no matter what it is she's supposedly done. And that he would believe the men over his own child as well. These are men, okay, they have this sense of respectability. It's the prince's brother, and the prince's right-hand man. But Leonato has known his daughter all his life, all her life. He would know, or should know, her sufficiently well to know whether it's believable or not. And yet he's taken it instantly as truth, and now wishes his daughter to be dead. Beatrice says, "How now, cousin Hero?" And the friar says, "Have comfort, lady." And Leonato says, "Dost thou look up?" Friar says, "Yea, wherefore should she not?" So the friar has not just taken it as truth, and even if it is true, has not sort of deemed it worthy of her dying. And Beatrice, completely on her cousin's side always, is desperate for her to wake up also. And Leonato says, "Wherefore? Why doth not every earthly thing cry shame upon her? Could she here deny the story that is printed in her blood? Do not live, hero, do not open thine eyes. For did I think thou wouldst not quickly die, thought I thy spirits were stronger than thy shames, myself would, on the rearward of reproaches, strike at thy life." He's saying he would kill her if she didn't die of her own accord. "Grieved I had but one. Child I for thee at frugal nature's frame. Oh, one too much by thee. Why had I one? Why ever wast thou lovely in mine eyes? Why had I not with charitable hand took up a beggar's issue at my gates? Who smirched thus and murred with infamy? I might have said, no part of it is mine. This shame derives itself from unknown loins. But mine, and mine I loved, and mine I praised, and mine that I was proud on, mine so much that I myself was to myself not mine, valuing of her. Why, she, oh, she is fallen into a pit of ink that the wide sea hath dropped too few to wash her clean again, and salt too little which may season give to her foul tainted flesh." And so Leonato is clearly heartbroken, but he's saying here that he wished either that his daughter died upon this, or that it wasn't his biological daughter, that somehow that would be better. But his biggest problem is that this shame is now on him as well. So he is disappointed that he is in some way tainted by this accusation. I might have said no part of it is mine, that the shame derives itself from unknown loins. That is in no way my fault. So Leonato is trying to protect himself here. And Benedick says, "Sir, sir, be patient. For my part, I am so attired in wonder, I know not what to say." Benedick is trying to be politic, which is unusual for Benedick. Beatrice says, "Oh, on my soul, my cousin is belied." Beatrice has absolutely no doubt that what the prince and Claudio have said is not true. And Benedick, who is hedging his bets here, is unsure because Don Pedro and Claudio were his good, close friends and he trusts them. But at the same time, Beatrice and Hero, he also wishes to believe. And Benedick acts and speaks and is actually trying to solve the problem. Says, "Lady, were you her bedfellow last night?" So everyone else so far has just made accusations and in no way tried to prove or disprove what's going on. And Benedick says, "Lady, were you her bedfellow last night?" And Beatrice says, "No, truly not, although until last night I have this 12-month been her bedfellow." So the previous accusation that Hero had meetings with this guy 1,000 times before suddenly sounds doubtful. And Leonato notices and says, "Confirmed, confirmed. Oh, that is stronger made, which was before barred up with ribs of iron. Would the two princes lie, and Claudio lie, who loved her so, that speaking of her foulness washed it with tears? Hence from her, let her die." So a momentary possibility that they were lying or mistaken, but it wasn't enough. He's already gone back to, "I wish she'd die." And the friar says, "Hear me a little." So Friar is being our voice of reason. He says, "Hear me a little, for I have only been silent so long and given way unto this course of fortune by noting of the lady." There's that word noting again. "I have marked 1,000 blushing apparitions to start on her face, 1,000 innocent shames. In angel whiteness bear away those blushes, and in her eyes there hath appeared a fire, to burn the errors that these princes hold against her maiden truth." So he's considering them errors. He's not called them lies, he's called them errors. They are mistaken in some way. "Call me a fool. Trust not my reading nor my observations, which with experimental seal doth warrant the tenure of my book. Trust not my age, my reverence, calling, nor divinity, if this sweet lady lie not guiltless here under some biting error." So Friar is convinced that Hero is completely innocent of everything that's just been said about her. What I find interesting about the friar is that he is actually an intelligent man. So often the clergymen in historical pieces, some are well-meaning, yes, but a lot of them are idiots, a bit like the watchmen are in this play. A lot of them were the less educated or the younger sons of families who couldn't get employment in more socially impressive ways. And so usually the clergymen and the sort of people of the church were not the brightest. And yet in this play, the friar is intelligent. He judges people correctly. He is able to untangle lies. He is able to see through people. And we'll see in a minute that he is actually able to outmaneuver the prince and the others who consider themselves smart enough to manage a deception. And so he's noticed that Hero is innocent and she is guiltless. And Leonato says, "Friar, it cannot be. Thou seest that all the grace that she hath left is that she will not add to her damnation a sin of perjury. She not denies it. Why seekst thou then to cover with excuses that which appears in proper nakedness?" And Friar then speaks to Hero, saying, "Lady, what man is he you are accused of?" And Hero says, "They know that do accuse me, I know none. If I know more of any man alive than that which maiden modesty doth warrant, let all my sins lack mercy. O my father, prove you that any man with me conversed at hours unmeet, or that I yesternight maintained the change of words with any creature. Refuse me, hate me, torture me to death." And the friar says, "There is some strange misprision in the princes." And Benedick says, "The two of them have the very bent of honour, and if their wisdoms be misled in this, the practice of it lives in John the Bastard, whose spirits toil in frame of villainies." So Benedick has realised immediately that Don John is clearly directing this whole chaos. And Leonato says, I know not. If they speak but truth of her, these hands shall tear her. If they wrong her honour, the proudest of them shall well hear of it. Time hath not yet so dried this blood of mine, nor age so eat up my invention, nor fortune made such havoc of my means, nor my bad life reft me so much of friends, but they shall find awaked in such a kind both strength of limb and policy of mind, ability in means and choice of friends, to quit me of them thoroughly. So Leonato is still not on Hero's side. He's saying, if they're right about her, I will kill her. If they're wrong about her, I will fight them out of a sense of pride. All of this Leonato is doing out of pride and trying to hold on to the respectability that he has in everybody's eyes. And the friar says, pause a while and let my counsel sway you in this case. Your daughter here the prince is left for dead. Let her a while be secretly kept in, and publish it that she is dead indeed. Maintain a mourning ostentation, and on your family's old monument hang mournful epitaphs, and do all rites that appertain unto a burial. And Leonato says, what shall become of this? What will this do? And the friar says, marry, this well carried shall on her behalf change slander to remorse. That is some good. But not for that dream I on this strange course, but on this travail look for greater birth. She dying, as it must be so maintained, upon the instant that she was accused, shall be lamented, pitied, and excused of every hearer. For it so falls out that what we have we prize not to the worth whilst we enjoy it, but being lacked and lost, why then we rack the value. Then we find the virtue that possession would not show us whilst it was ours. Sort of that you only miss something once you don't have it anymore. And he continues, so will it fare with Claudio. When he shall hear she died upon his words, the idea of her life shall sweetly creep into his study of imagination, and every lovely organ of her life shall come apparelled in more precious habit, more moving, delicate, and full of life, into the eye and prospect of his soul, than when she lived indeed. Then shall he mourn, if ever love had interest in his liver, and wish he had not so accused her. No, though be thought his accusation true, let this be so, and doubt not but success will fashion the event in better shape than I can lay it down in likelihood. But if all aim but this be levelled false, the supposition of the lady's death will quench the wonder of her infamy, and if it sort not well, you may conceal her, as best befits her wounded reputation, in some reclusive religious life, out of all eyes, tongues, minds, and injuries. The friar has suggested that they hide Hero and claim that she is dead, and then if she was genuinely guilty of this, they could hide her away and nobody's reputation would be bothered by it. And at the very least, the prince and Claudio will be sorry for what they've done, or he expects them to be sorry for what they've done. And Benedick says, Signor Leonato, let the friar advise you, and though you know my inwardness and love is very much unto the prince and Claudio, yet by mine honour I will deal in this as secretly and justly as your soul should with your body. This is one of the few times we've heard Benedick actually be serious, and he's claiming that the prince and Claudio are his allies, his best friends. And yet we've seen over the last part of the play that really they have been acting separate to him. And so Benedick is saying, I will support you in this decision to hide Hero. And Leonato said, being that I flow in grief, the smallest twine may lead me. And Friar says, 'tis well consented, presently away. For to strange sores strangely they strain the cure. Come, lady, die to live. This wedding day perhaps is but prolonged. Have patience and endure. And then the friar, Hero, and Leonato leave at that point. And then Benedick says to Beatrice, Lady Beatrice, have you wept all this while? Beatrice says, yea, and I will weep a while longer. And Benedick says, I will not desire that. And Beatrice says, you have no reason, I do it freely. Benedick says, surely I do believe your fair cousin is wronged. And Beatrice says, ah, how much might the man deserve of me that would right her? And Benedick says, "Is there any way to show such friendship?" Beatrice, "A very even way, but no such friend." Benedick, "May a man do it?" Beatrice, "It is a man's office, but not yours." And Benedick, "I do love nothing in the world so well as you. Is not that strange?" So this is it. This is the first time Benedick has spoken to Beatrice about this love that he has decided he will have for Beatrice. And it's completely out of the blue in the context of what they're talking about there. And he recognises the fact that it's strange, it's unexpected. And Beatrice replies, saying, "As strange as a thing I know not, it were as possible for me to say I loved nothing so well as you. But believe me not, and yet I lie not. I confess nothing, nor I deny nothing. I am sorry for my cousin." So Beatrice is very much uncertain and confused about what she's feeling and what she wants to say, and so changes the subject. "I am sorry for my cousin." Benedick says, "By my sword, Beatrice, thou lovest me." And Beatrice says, "Do not swear by it, and eat it." Benedick says, "I will swear by it that you love me, and I will make him eat it that says I love not you." And Beatrice says, "Will you not eat your word?" Benedick, with no source that can be devised to it, "I protest I love thee." And Beatrice says, "Why then, God forgive me." And Benedick says, "What offence, sweet Beatrice?" And Beatrice says, "You have saved me in a happy hour. I was about to protest I loved you." So Beatrice has finally come to the point and accepted that she loves him. And Benedick says, "And do it with all thy heart." Beatrice says, "I love you with so much of my heart that none is left to protest." Benedick replies, "Come, bid me do anything for thee." And then Beatrice says, "Kill Claudio." That's pretty swiftly put an end to the romance of the moment. "Kill Claudio" is Beatrice's request here. Benedick says, "Ha, not for the wide world." And Beatrice says, "You kill me to deny it. Farewell." And Benedick says, "Tarry, sweet Beatrice." And Beatrice says, "I am gone, though I am here. There is no love in you. Nay, I pray you, let me go." And Benedick says, "Beatrice." Beatrice says, "In faith I will go." And Benedick says, "We'll be friends first." And Beatrice says, "You dare easier be friends with me than fight with mine enemy." And Benedick says, "Is Claudio thine enemy?" Benedick still believes in the honour and worth of Claudio and Don Pedro. So he doesn't think Claudio is the enemy, despite the fact that what Claudio did just is completely wrong in our current way of thinking. Beatrice says, "Is he not approved in the height a villain, that hath slandered, scorned, dishonoured my kinswoman? Oh, that I were a man! What, bear her in hand until they come to take hands, and then with public accusation, uncovered slander, unmitigated rancour. Oh God, that I were a man, I would eat his heart in the marketplace." So Beatrice sees what it's about, that his behaviour is unacceptable no matter what Hero's behaviour was. And Benedick says, "Hear me, Beatrice." Beatrice continues, "Talk with a man out a window, a proper saying." And Benedick, "Nay, but Beatrice." And Beatrice says, "Sweet Hero, she is wrong, she is slandered, she is undone." And Benedick says, and then Beatrice says, "Princes and counties, surely a princely testimony, a goodly count confect, a sweet gallant, surely, oh, that I were a man for his sake, or that I had any friend would be a man for my sake. But manhood is melted into curtsies, valour into compliment, and men are only turned into tongue, and trim ones too. He is now as valiant as Hercules that only tells a lie and swears it. I cannot be a man with wishing, therefore I will die a woman with grieving." So Beatrice resents the fact that the women have no power to do anything. It's all on the men to fight for someone's honour, to avenge someone. The men have all the power. And Beatrice, although mostly seems to live a life in which she has control of her own life, resents the fact that she is powerless here. But she also recognises that a lot of what the men's power is purely hearsay, purely what they talk about. Manhood is melted into curtsies, valour into compliment, and men are only turned into tongue. It's all words, no action. And Benedick says, "Tarry, good Beatrice, by this hand I love thee." And Beatrice says, "Use it for my love some other way than swearing by it." Again, it's all talk and no action. And Benedick says, "Think you in your soul that Count Claudio hath wronged Hero?" I can't quite see why Benedick doesn't see that, but he clearly still thinks well of Claudio and the prince. And Beatrice says, "Yea, as sure as I have a thought or a soul." And Benedick finally says, "Enough. I am engaged. I will challenge him. I will kiss your hand and so leave you. By this hand Claudio shall render me a dear account. As you hear of me, so think of me. Go comfort your cousin. I must say she is dead. And so, farewell." And then they leave. And so we are seeing that Benedick's allegiance is changing. It was the prince and Claudio. They were his team. He was with them. And now he's switched. He's saying, right, I am going to fight on your side, Beatrice, and for Hero. So that was the end of Act 4, Scene 1. On to Scene 2. And we're back with the Watch. And this is set in a prison. And we have entering Dogberry, Verges and Sexton in gowns, and the Watch with Conrad and Borachio. So Dogberry starts and says, "Is our whole assembly appeared?" Verges, "Oh, a stool and a cushion for the sexton." And the sexton says, "Which be the malefactors?" And Dogberry says, "Marry, that am I and my partner." Verges, "Nay, that's certain, we have the exhibition to examine." And Sexton says, "But which are the offenders that are to be examined? Let them come before the master constable." And Dogberry says, "Yea, marry, let them come before me. What is your name, friend?" Borachio replies, "Borachio." And Dogberry says, "Pray write down Borachio's, and yours, sir." And Conrad says, "I am a gentleman, sir, and my name is Conrad." And Dogberry says, "Write down Master Gentleman Conrad. Masters, do you serve God?" And both of them say, "Sir, we hope." And Dogberry says, "Write down that they hope they serve God, and write God first, for God defend, but God should go before such villains. Masters, it is proved already that you are little better than false knaves, and it will go near to be thought so shortly. How answer you for yourselves?" And Conrad says, "Marry, sir, we say we are none." And Dogberry says, "A marvellous witty fellow, I assure you, but I will go about with him. Come you hither, sir. A word in your ear. Sir, I say to you, it is thought you are false knaves." And Borachio says, "Sir, I say to you, we are none." And Dogberry says, "Well, stand aside. 'Fore God, they are both in a tale. Have you writ down that they are none?" And the sexton says, "Master Constable, you go not the way to examine. You must call forth the Watch that are their accusers." And Dogberry says, "Yea, marry, that's the efforts this way. Let the Watch come forth. Masters, I charge you in the prince's name, accuse these men." And the first Watch says, "This man said, sir, that Don John, the prince's brother, was a villain." And Dogberry said, "Write down Prince John a villain. Why, this is flat perjury to call a prince's brother villain." And here we get Dogberry constantly getting the wrong end of the stick, constantly picking up on the wrong ideas as crimes. So apparently calling Don John a villain is what Dogberry sees as the crime. And Borachio says, "Master Constable." And Dogberry says, "Pray thee, fellow, peace. I do not like thy look, I promise thee." And Sexton says, "What heard you him say else?" And the second Watch says, "Marry, that he had received 1,000 ducats of Don John for accusing the Lady Hero wrongfully." And Dogberry says, "Flat burglary as ever was committed." So now he's deciding the amount of money is what the problem is. And Verges says, "Yea, by the mass that it is." And Sexton says, "What else, fellow?" And the first Watch says, "And that Count Claudio did mean upon his words to disgrace Hero before the whole assembly and not marry her." And Dogberry says, "O villain, thou wilt be condemned into everlasting redemption for this." And the sexton says, "What else?" And the second Watch says, "This is all." And the sexton then explains, "And this is more, masters, than you can deny. Prince John is this morning secretly stolen away. Hero was in this manner accused, in this manner refused, and upon the grief of this, suddenly died. Master Constable, let these men be bound and brought to Leonato's. I will go before and show him their examination." And they all exit. So finally, somebody who seems to be a sensible person knows what's happened, knows what's going on. the villains of the piece have been found out, and it sounds like at this point everything will be resolved. So they've exited, and then Dogberry continues, "Come, let them be opinioned," and Virgil says, "Let them be in the hands," and Conrad says, "Off coxcomb," and Dogberry says, "God's my life, where's the sexton? Let him write down the prince's officer coxcomb. Come, bind them, thou naughty varlet." And Conrad says, "Away, you are an ass, you are an ass." And Dogberry says, "Dost thou not suspect my place? Dost thou not suspect my years? Oh, that he were here to write me down an ass! But, masters, remember that I am an ass. Though it be not written down, yet forget not that I am an ass. Know thou, villain, thou art full of piety, as shall be proved upon thee by good witness. I am a wise fellow, and, which is more, an officer, and which is more, a householder, and which is more, as pretty a piece of flesh as any in Messina, and one that knows the law go to, and a rich fellow enough go to, and a fellow that hath had losses, and one that hath 2 gowns, and everything handsome about him. Bring him away. Oh, that I had been writ down an ass." Again, we see that Dogberry has a really high opinion of himself, when in reality he is not the brightest of people. And so that is the end of Act 4. And we have seen the failed wedding, we have seen the ruin of Hero, we've seen the friar start his own piece of deception where Hero is now presented as being dead when secretly she's not, and that Benedick's allegiance has changed from Don Pedro and Claudio to Beatrice and Hero. And so we will finish there.